Lovely. Thank you very much. I'm going to say good morning to everybody, and thank you for joining us for this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board. I'd firstly like to welcome any members of the press or public who may be watching today's meeting via the Council's website. Just before we move into the formal business, for the benefit of those joining us online, I would like to introduce myself along with the members of the board that are here today. My name's Councillor Graham Ashwood. I'm the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board, and I'm joined today by my board colleagues, namely Councillors Alan Garbett, David Jones, Betty Olivia Rowley, and unfortunately I've just had an email not half an hour ago saying that Ian Saunders can't be with us today because he's gone in for an operation on his knee. So I'm sure everybody wishes him well. We'll be joined this morning by Mark Tolson, the designated scrutiny officer for agendas items 6 and 7 on today's agenda. And before we move on to the formal agenda items, I'd just like to confirm before the meeting that we will take each of the agenda items in order, and copies have been provided to members and also available on the Council's website. So if everyone's happy, I'll now proceed with our formal business. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Emma, I have Councillor Martin Ward, and we've both just had Ian Saunders, is that right?
Yeah, we've also got Councillor Alan Garbett has sent his apologies as well.
Sorry about that. Yeah, and as I understand it, it's Martin Ward. He's not seeking re-election. I'd like to thank him all the best for the future, and thank you for his contribution to the panel while he's been on. Right, agenda item 2. It's the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of February 2021, and these can be found on agenda item pages 1 to 5. Could I ask members who are present at this meeting, is there anything in the minutes that you'll see as incorrect? If not, I'll take silence as approval of the minutes of the true record. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 3 is Chair's announcements. As this is the last meeting of this council year, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank members and officers for all their valuable service to the Scrutiny Board. And what we've got to admit, it's been an extraordinary year. I think we've coped rather well, and I thank all the chairs that have contributed so well, and members as well. So let's just hope that everybody's back following the elections, and I wish everybody well that's standing in the elections. Agenda item 4, urgent items. I have no urgent items. Agenda item 5 is the old chestnut, members' declarations of interest. Do any members have any interests to verbally declare in matters before us? No. Which takes us seamlessly on to agenda item 6. And this is the impact of the COVID-19 on the Council's decision-making arrangements. If you look at the report on agenda item 7, it provides members with the overview of the decision-making of the Council during the pandemic in the 12 months beginning March 2020. The traditional approach to decision-making, well, we couldn't do it. It was no longer appropriate. So we had to consider to see how decisions could be made, the speed at which they could be implemented, and who was authorised to take them. I took the decision that anything to do with COVID and grants towards COVID, I put them away so there'd be no need for calling. However, I'll invite Mark Tolson, who is the designated scrutiny officer, to present the report and explain questions.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. And I do agree, Chair, with your earlier comment that the last 12 months has been an extraordinary year. I think we can all agree with you on that one. The coronavirus pandemic has had a significant impact within the Wakefield district, as it had both nationally and internationally, with the council being at the forefront of delivering a local response at pace and in conjunction with our partners and in accordance with government guidance. This report, as you've introduced it, Chair, provides an overview of the impact of COVID-19 on the Council's decision-making arrangements, with a particular focus on those executive decisions taken in direct response to the pandemic, which required speedy implementation. To facilitate this, the Chair of the Management Board has played an important role throughout the pandemic, giving consideration to each decision and agreeing to waive the call-in provisions on a number of occasions, 42 decisions in total, to allow their speedy implementation. This has ensured that vital funding and support could be quickly delivered to businesses, to our communities, and particularly our most vulnerable residents. The decisions themselves were circulated to all members of council, as is normal practice, and are all included on the member delegated decision register, which is available on the council's website. So by way of overview, these decisions are identified in the appendix to the report and are highlighted in green on the table. To ensure that the Management Board is able to see all COVID-19 related executive decisions taken during this period, other decisions taken by executive members which were subject to call-in are also included in that table, and I've just identified those as yellow in the final column. So this report covers the 12-month period commencing in March 2020, following the Prime Minister's announcement of what proved to be the first national lockdown. And it is safe to say that the pandemic has set an unprecedented challenges for all councils to maintain business critical services, to reconfigure our service delivery models, and to support the health and safety of both staff and our customers and citizens. We all acknowledge that the scale and nature of the pandemic and the government's response to it has been unprecedented in recent history, and as such the council's internal control environment has been tested in many different ways. You'll be pleased to know that the Audit and Governance Committee have looked separately at how the different components of the internal control environment. This report looks specifically at our decision-making arrangements. What became clear to us all was that the traditional approach to decision-making was no longer appropriate in a pandemic situation, requiring fundamental shifts to how decisions could be taken, the speed in which decisions needed to be implemented, alongside consideration as who could take those decisions if the decision taker was absent, be it through illness or through care and responsibilities, etc. We've all had to adjust to online meetings, as we're doing so today, and other forms of working that probably not so long ago seemed like something out of tomorrow's world. Forgive me there, I'm obviously showing my age with a 1970s TV reference. The report touches upon the emergency arrangements that we put in place for both executive and non-executive decision making right at the very outset. These were put in place before the Coronavirus Act went through Parliament. The delegations to ensure that decision making could continue in the absence of senior managers, and also specific decision-making arrangements for both licensing and planning and highways decisions to enable decision-making to continue, as I say, in advance of that legislation coming forward, allowing the introduction of remote meetings. Paragraph 6.6 of the report and the following paragraphs looks at the impact of remote meetings once regulations have been issued under the Coronavirus Act. And applying the regulations has enabled the Council, on the whole, to successfully deliver Council, Cabinet, overview and scrutiny and other committee meetings, all of which complied with the public health guidance. As a Council, we have also supported meetings of the Police and Crime Panel and the West Yorkshire Joint Services Committee. You'll all, I guess, have your own opinions on remote meetings, whether you like them or not. There have, of course, been a number of challenges, but also benefits and opportunities, and particularly as the Council seeks to migrate to the Microsoft 360 and Teams platform, which is where some of our external partners currently are at the moment. I've outlined some of the benefits in paragraph 6.8, through supporting councillors in balancing their meetings, increasing member opportunity to attend meetings. Longer term, if we were to continue with some form of remote meetings, it may encourage a more diverse council membership, i.e. those with children or caring responsibilities, or those who are in full-time employment may be more likely to be encouraged to stand as councillors. There's of course a positive environmental impact of not travelling to meetings by car, particularly for meetings of full council. And it has, I guess, widened the opportunity for the public to observe council meetings. There have, of course, been lots of learning throughout the last 12 months, and these have been referenced in paragraph 6.10 to 6.12 of the report. It's also worth noting, Chair, that the regulations which have enabled council meetings to be held remotely are actually due to expire on the 7th of May 2021. So there has been some debate as to whether primary legislation is required to extend the existing regulations, and with a view to assisting the Secretary of State, the Local Government Association, in consultation with lawyers in local government and the Association of Democratic Services Officers, sought Council's opinion in relation to the expiry of the regulations and the ability to hold council meetings remotely past the 7th of May. To that end, Council has provided an opinion on options available to extend the regulations without the requirement for primary legislation, and as such, a declaration from the court is currently being sought. I understand this will take place tomorrow, so hopefully by the end of the week we will have a decision as to whether these remote meeting regulations will be able to be extended. I think what I personally hope that the decision provides is the flexibility for councils to hold meetings in person where appropriate, but also allowing remote meetings if required. I'll leave it there, Chair, and happy to answer any questions should that be required. I mean, I guess just in conclusion, I think there have been some notable successes, but also some opportunities for reflection and improvement. But I do think that taking a few moments to think about what has been achieved, the resilience shown throughout the council and the lessons learned will stand the council in good stead in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. I personally think that was an excellent report, and who would have thought we'd have been having this discussion 12, 18 months ago. I have my own personal views about personal meetings or remote meetings, but I do understand what you're saying. I think one of the most useful things that come out of it is that the officers know where to come straight away. They came straight to the management board. Is it okay if we don't call this one in because of X, Y, Z? So I thought that was a huge success. I've got one from Olivia Rowley. Olivia, over to you, man.
Good morning, Chair. I'd just like to comment that I think I have mixed feelings. I think it's been very efficient in terms of having meetings in this way, but I probably, like you, do miss meeting others and actually being influenced and influencing others, which is quite difficult to do on IT. I've had tremendous problems with Teams, and we had a health meeting last week in which other agencies had similar problems, and it meant that first of all the meeting was complicated, and the next one has been cancelled or postponed. So I do think we still have a way to go in terms of improving our IT, but I think we've coped very well. Can I just say on the decision making that I'm delighted that we've made the decision to go ahead with some of the decisions that are listed, in particular the one on the extension of the COVID winter grant scheme. What it needed there was urgency, and certainly in my ward I've actually met some of the recipients of this grant, and they've been really appreciative, and it has indicated in some cases just the level of poverty we have in our wards, and how something like this can really help with essentials. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Olivia. I think that side of it's been a huge success. I could just imagine what it was like if they hadn't had the management board to say, is it okay if we don't call this in, blah, blah, blah. Who does it? Or who do they go to? Which cabinet member does it sit? Because it's all complicated, but I think that side of it worked very well, and I'm pleased about that. David, you have a comment.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. I fully support what Olivia said. I know with regards to sort of how we go forward with meetings, because you always do think when you're chairing a meeting and you're chairing it remotely, you know, you're not able to, you know, sort of share views, you know, as you're going along. Sometimes it is difficult to read a meeting as well, because you can't see what people are, you know, sort of gesturing and so forth. So the meetings are more difficult to read. And I know, I must admit, when obviously I was asked, you know, what would be the way forward for our scrutiny committee, it would be very much the case, can we have, you know, sort of, like, you know, meetings in person as soon as possible, obviously in safety, because I think, you know, again, we'll be able to move further forward. With regards to the decision-making processes, again, I think it's worked very, very well. I know I attended a meeting with Pontefract market traders last Tuesday, and it has made the difference between being able to move forward successfully and not being able to have, you know, properly effective markets in the future, because of the decisions that were being made to support traders during these very difficult times, and obviously the way forward. So I think being able to make decisions very quickly has made a lot of difference to people. And I think it's also worked well in terms of going out, and obviously I'm involved at one community centre in the district, and I know the speed at which decisions were made in order to, in the first instance, get support into much needed support into communities, particularly when people really didn't know where the next meal was going to be coming from. I think all the support that was put in very quickly and very effectively did make a big difference to the quality of lives of people in our district over that period of time. So I think, whilst we would have probably preferred to have carried on as we have normally done, given the challenges which obviously we've all faced, and Mark has articulated very well in terms of how the council has responded to, I think, yes, we have proved that we are an effective council, that we are able to respond very quickly to challenges, and we've been able to basically think on our feet. So I think it's quite right to sort of say well done to everybody during this period of time. I think it's really shown what a strong council this is. Thanks, Graham.
Yeah, thank you, David. I mean, my views are, I think, are well known about remote meetings. I think the very word remote says it all. I'd much prefer to be looking at all your handsome faces than talking to a screen. It's just completely alien to me. But there you go. Betty, you have a comment? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just to endorse the comments that's been made already, and I think first thing to say is what an excellent report it is here this morning again. Olivia referred to my meeting on the adult health scrutiny, which I chaired, and it was an absolute horrendous meeting, because when we invite through that portfolio people from the health provision, such as the Mid Yorkshire Trust or the Dentistry or the Care Quality Commission or many other bodies out there that provide care, total care, a lot of those are on different platforms, different Zoom or Microsoft Teams, or one is pulled away from Skype, and it was a challenge, let's put it that way. Consequently, one of our attendees on a very important issue in regards to residential care couldn't actually attend virtually or even by phone to the meeting. And we eventually got the other report on, and it was the report itself was good, but it just identified the problems that we have with various people and various systems out there. As far as the health agenda is concerned, the other part of the portfolio as well is not going to go away, it's going to be there for the future, and that's corporate working across joint committees, where my committee interacts and is part of, through membership, the Joint Committee for West Yorkshire, which is Leeds, Bradford, Calderdale, Wakefield and Kirklees. And they themselves and others have had difficulties. The challenges have been able to communicate across at times has indeed been major. But I have to say, I think through the year, with the subject and topics that we've all had to deal with, including the COVID situation and public health, I think we've stood up to the challenge, and I think we've all come out at this end knowing a bit more about it, even though it has been frustrating. The grants that have been made available through non-call-in have been obviously a tremendous help and support to people out in the communities. And I've been involved, as I know others have, in finding out in detail the issues about food banks and how people were going to get a meal on the table the next day or for the next week. I also want to say, Chair, and I'm sure everybody would want to acknowledge as well, the work that has been undertaken by our staff in dealing with all the issues that are in green here that just don't happen on their own. It's been tremendous work, absolutely tremendous work that they've carried out. And I'm sure, as has been said, the communities as a whole and the business across our district have actually been able to cope, and I'll put the word cope because it has been difficult, as well as the support that's been given to community centres out there. And I'm sure Olivia and a lot more will recognise my comment in terms of the community centres mostly depend on income generated through groups and organisations, social activities, which actually stopped. It had to do, like everything else. So I think the system as a whole has been supportive in keeping these places open, hopefully for the day pretty soon when everybody can come back and enjoy being back and socialising together, which I believe is not only vital, as you say, Chair, in terms of communication, but as well, I believe that it's also good for socialisation from our point of view, of being able to see somebody and talk to somebody as well. So well done to everybody, and that's the situation we've had, Chair, and hopefully for the future when it is sorted out, as Mark says, that we can still go on having a challenge, but at the same time looking forward to socially distanced face-to-face. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Betty. Yeah, I think it's been said, everything's been said. I think it's just proved how adaptable we are. I suppose when everything, all this lot first came on us, it was a question of what are we going to do? But when I look around how the officers have rallied together, how members have rallied together, how Scrutiny's played an important part, I'm really proud of what this council has achieved. And I do hope that we're all meeting face to face very, very shortly. As I've said before, I'm looking at all. I don't class it all as council. We're all friends. We're all colleagues and friends, a lot of us. And not to see your friends and colleagues, I think it's a pretty bitter pill to take. Okay, thank you very much for that. Anyway, thanks. Great report, Mark. Really enjoyed it. Which will move on now to the overview and scrutiny arrangements. If you recall, earlier in the year, we agreed to undertake a review of the current overview and scrutiny arrangements. And the report at agenda page 29 represents the final draft proposal, including both structural and development recommendations, as listed on page 34 and 35. This meeting provides an opportunity for members to discuss these recommendations and to accept, reject, or amend them. So I'll invite Mark, and I'd like to add that I'd like to thank Mark. There's been a heck of a lot of work gone into this report, as you can see by reading it. I think it's one of the most thorough reports I've read for a very long time, and had a small input myself, but mainly down thanks to Mark. But I think it's something that we've got to grab. The restructured at the corporate directors level, and when you look at what we've currently got, we've got David's scrutiny, which with a little bit of tinkering is fine. We've got Betty's, which with a little bit of tinkering is fine. and they've both had a chance to have a look. And then everything else, what the council does, is all dumped in with Olivia, which I don't think it's fair on Olivia, and I don't think it's fair for Scrutiny. There just isn't enough time in there. So anyway, you'll see the report. So I'll ask Mark to run through it with you and ask any questions. Okay, thanks. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your comments. Much appreciated. Members will recall that the scrutiny arrangements in Wakefield were last reviewed back in 2017, and since that time the council has undergone several changes, including the recent structural review, which resulted in the creation of the Communities, Environment and Climate Change Directorate alongside the creation of the Chief Executive's Unit. So it was within that overall context that the Management Board commissioned a review of the function to ensure that it remained fit for purpose, that it continued to work effectively and makes best use of both member and officer time, whilst importantly adding value in support of better outcomes for Wakefield residents. The following discussions with the Chair, the following outcomes for the review were agreed, and those were that: are there the right number of committees at Wakefield, and do they have the right terms of reference to ensure they reflect the challenges faced by the council moving forward? In considering the scrutiny structure, have regard to the portfolio changes which have taken place since 2017 and the outcome of the senior management review undertaken in 2020. To consult with overview and scrutiny members and identify any areas for improvement, having regard to the statutory guidance on overview and scrutiny in local and combined authorities. Ensure that the relationship between the executive and scrutiny works well, with mutual respect with regard to each other's respective roles, and clearly set out the conditions for scrutiny to succeed in Wakefield. And finally, to review the co-opted member representation on the Children and Young People Committee, discussions having previously taken place with Councillor Jones and the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People before the pandemic back in 2019. It seems a long time ago now. What I would say, Chair, is that I think a weakness of the current structure is that the Management Board is currently top-heavy with responsibilities to do justice to all those areas. This includes responsibility for the budget and performance matters, corporate functions, but also responsibility for regeneration and economic growth, for housing, for culture, for sport, for tourism. And the Management Board is also currently designated as the Crime and Disorder Committee. So, given that the board only meets on 6 occasions during the year, I mean, a number of areas have not been scrutinised for some time in any in-depth degree. So, as reported at our last meeting, a broad consensus has emerged that there is a need to sharpen the focus on the council's economic growth functions and how we monitor progress towards being a strong and compassionate district, promoting opportunities for access to learning, skills and employment for all. You'll therefore see that it is proposed that we establish a new Regeneration, Employment and Skills Overview and Scrutiny Committee with the terms of reference incorporating all areas of the Regeneration and Economic Growth Directorate, with the exception of Home Energy, which includes Home Energy Efficiency Improvement Programme and the Green Homes Grant, which will sit under the Climate Change and Environmental Wellbeing Committee, and had a discussion with Councillor Rowley about that. Given that the communities now forms part of the Communities, Environment and Climate Change Directorate, it is proposed that the Climate Change and Environmental Wellbeing Committee be designated as the Council's Crime and Disorder Committee. So communities and crime and disorder sitting together. The proposed structure and narrative are set out on agenda pages 38 to 43. What I would say is that a recent restructure within legal and governance has seen the officer structure strengthened in this area to support the proposed new structure, and that is important as the current structure and number of meetings has been aligned over recent years to existing resources. So a strengthening of resources in the area is very important. I also took the opportunity to review our self-assessment against the statutory guidance, which poses some questions in areas where we currently only have partial compliance. So with this in mind, I circulated a short questionnaire to all scrutiny members to seek to engage them in the process, to seek their views on what they felt were the challenges facing scrutiny, where they felt scrutiny could be improved, etc., with a view to informing the outcomes of the review. Part 4 of the report, therefore, reflects the views of scrutiny members to the questions posed, and they have provided much food for thought, and I do thank all members who took the time to respond. It's very, very much appreciated. I should also maybe have said earlier, Chair, that the report sets out both structural recommendations alongside developmental recommendations. Any recommendation under the structural recommendations would not only require the approval of the Management Board, but also full Council. So the thoughts of scrutiny members are therefore set out in the developmental recommendations of the report. And these are matters for the Management Board to decide how to take these thoughts and recommendations forward, should they wish to do so. And these are things that you might wish to reflect upon and consider over time rather than making decisions here today. With regard to the statutory guidance in relation to conflicts of interest, if I can just refer to that between the executive and scrutiny. Members responding to the questionnaire were firmly of the view that councillors who were no longer a member of the executive should be allowed to join scrutiny without condition, particularly given their experience, which would be valuable to the working of the committee in which they served. From a public perception, however, to avoid any perceived familial links, members felt that it would be wise that former executive members should not scrutinise the previous portfolio during the first year of stepping down. I highlight this because if that view is supported, this would require a specific recommendation to Council, which I've provisionally included in the structural recommendations. One part of the report I would welcome members' views on is in relation to question 5 on agenda page 55, where we ask members around the relationship between the executive and scrutiny, ensuring it works well with mutual respect of each other's roles and conditions for scrutiny to succeed in Wakefield. The majority of respondents to the question on balance supported the idea of introducing a more formal protocol, but this was not to suggest that conflict regularly manifested itself between the two functions, far from it. What the responses did highlight was that difficulties were rare, and the acknowledgement that things worked best when the committee itself worked in a non-political manner. There was mutual and shared understanding of the important role of both executive and scrutiny, and a mutual understanding of their specific roles in the overall governance of the council. Those who responded did acknowledge, however, that this could not always be guaranteed, and as such to formalise the process and to they were supportive of the introduction of some form of executive scrutiny protocol to future-proof the relationship rather than seeking to put something in place because of a problem which currently existed. As such, there is a recommendation that an executive scrutiny protocol be established to define the relationship between the two functions and to ensure that a formal process exists for scrutiny comments to reach the executive. With regard to the second part of the question, the conditions for scrutiny to succeed, these have been included in a vision for scrutiny, which, if agreed, will form part of the Constitution. I have sort of been reflecting on this since the report was published. And I actually think that the conditions for scrutiny to succeed are set out in the vision for scrutiny in Wakefield on agenda page 56. In effect, act as that protocol, recognising for scrutiny to succeed there needs to be mutual respect between the executive and scrutiny. And I would be interested to hear members' views. Included in the report are also some specific proposals to reduce the number of co-opted members on the Children and Young People and committee from 16 to 11. Whilst the numbers will reduce, the co-opted members will continue to reflect the different aspects of the committee's work programme. And again, if you were supportive of those proposals, that would need to be a recommendation through to full council. The draft terms of reference for the proposed new committee arrangements are set out at Appendix A of the report, which starts at agenda page 60. So, just in conclusion, Chair, and just to reiterate that any changes to the scrutiny structure will require both Management Board and full Council approval, and if agreed, would take effect from May 2021, being the beginning of the new municipal year. This would also include changes to co-opted member representation. There'll then be a piece of work for me to update the articles of the Constitution alongside Ovian Scrutiny procedure rules in Part 4 to take account of any changes which may be agreed. And I'll leave you there, Chair, and welcome your comments.
Thank you very much, Mark. Yeah, I think it's going to be a massive improvement, to be honest with you. I think that over the years, scrutiny seems to have been watered down a little bit. And I think it's our job to try and put it in its rightful place. I don't really want us to be seen as enemies to the executive. I would like to think that we're friendly critics, if that can be possible. But I certainly think that a regular meeting should be held between I know David does, and I know Olivia does, and I know Betty does as well. And I know they have regular meetings with the executive members, but I still think it should be formalised as well. So anyway, what I'll do, I'll have to congratulate you again on this report. I think it's a fabulous report. I've tried my level best to try and find something that I could trip you up on, but I haven't been able to. So I'll hand it over to my colleagues for their questions or comments, please. It doesn't look as if there's any questions, and it doesn't look as if there's any comments. So, wait a minute, it's coming. I thought you were going to get away with that nice and easy, Mark. Right, I've got Betty. Did you come in first there? I don't know if it's. Oh no, sorry, it's Olivia.
Olivia first, Chair.
Yep, Olivia, over to you.
Can I just say that I attended a meeting of West Yorkshire Scrutiny recently, and the chair was just commenting on the fact that the numbers are going to increase so significantly because the leaders have agreed to have more scrutiny subgroups. So I think it'll increase from 18 to 48 members across West Yorkshire. And he was pleading that the ones that are already there are able to remain, that he hopes that the groups in the council will nominate the same people, simply because there'll be so many green members, if you like, as in new members, that the lack of continuity and the spread of the knowledge will be limited. And we're the same here in Wakefield, that our co-opted members are on for 3 years. But in fact, we don't have enough meetings and clearly can't afford to have many, many more. And at the same time, if we have amazing turnovers of the membership of each board, that's our problem really, that we have to start from scratch again because it's new to quite a lot of people. And I just wonder about continuity. Is it possible to at least ensure that people are on for 2 years and speak to our groups about that?
Yep. Thanks, Olivia. But I also think as well, is by expanding the number of boards that we've got, that's giving more members more opportunities to take part in scrutiny. I mean, there's some of them don't take any part in any scrutiny, so I see that as a positive thing. But I certainly see what you're saying about continuity. Yeah, David.
Yeah. Thanks, Graham. Again, continuity is, as well as expertise, are vital components, I think, for all scrutiny committees, because I think it's you once the chair has sort of opened up a meeting on any particular topic, you do hope that members are then able to sort of come forward and ask challenging questions, maybe make supportive comments. But at the end of the day, I know from my committee where the expertise lies. That's where you get the really in-depth sort of questions, digging into challenging officers, which is obviously the most important component of the scrutiny process. So I think there has to be a balance of continuity and expertise when sort of looking at the sort of the makeup of the committees, because I think these are public meetings and the public expect to see scrutiny of what are multi-million-pound departments. And I know it's what has been successful in my committee has been that sort of drive to ensure that the service has and is in the process of sort of going back to what it should be. But that has been because of the, if you like, a particular group of members. So I must admit, sort of looking at what is planned with regard to sort of the makeup of the committee moving forward, I think that is important, something that we do have to retain. But I think again, sort of looking at the types of groups who will be recognised to be members of the committee, I think that again that's a lot of good thought has gone into that to ensure that we have got that expertise. The only area that obviously maybe slight concern from my point of view is that, you know, we know whether we agree or disagree with academisation, that's beyond the point. We have got that now, and I think looking through the representation, the proposed representation, given that over 50% of the schools in the district now are no longer directly connected with the authority, then I think it may well be that as this moves forward that we do have to take due notice of that in terms of getting some form of recognition of that sector of education on the committee, because we have to recognise that. And I know that it would also maybe sort of be a strong support to officers who have made big strides forward in terms of building new relationships with academies, and I think this would be maybe just the next step on. The other thing as well, and coming back onto the combined authority, it does give me a great cause for concern the numbers of members across all 5 authorities who will be, you know, to be part of that scrutiny process, and it will be a significant demand on all our times, and it is important, no matter what else, is that we do protect our own scrutiny process, and it doesn't end up getting either downgraded or certainly weakened because of the sheer amount of time that will be expected to be given over to the Merrill Combined Authority, because certainly that's what is going to be expected of members on that scrutiny process. It will take time, so it goes back to the fact that I think we've got to have a very clear balance across both the scrutiny process in the combined authority as well as in what will be taking place in Wakefield. So I think that is something that in terms of the planning has got to be real notice has got to be taken of that. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, David. When I served on the combined authority scrutiny, you could actually see it coming. The workload was always going to be absolutely enormous, and anybody who thought any different, I think, would a bit naive or a bit silly. Councillor Rhodes, Betty.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, the comments that have been made already, I fully concur with. The role of scrutiny for the future is even going to be more challenging than it is at the moment. And when you look at the portfolios that each scrutiny committee has, it's a tremendous workload. From the inception of reports within our own authority and the responsibles there, and as has been mentioned, the combined authority, the West Yorkshire Health Authority, the joint scrutiny committees that will be between authorities in terms of the provision of health in general, the responsibility and ownership of challenges, an overview in particular of what's going on outside bodies in the provision of all the services that are across these 4 portfolios. I have in the past, as I'm sure you, Chair, will recall, and I know Olivia and David as well, being conscious that in order to accommodate the workload, and at times we haven't actually prioritised at the same time as leaving, we hope, enough capacity that if something comes from the public, which is their right to do, that we can actually fit it into our agenda. I've been very concerned about the pressures that this has put on our existing scrutiny officers. They do a tremendous job for the size of the portfolios that we all have. So I am grateful to see that we are going to have some extra support, admin support, and to benefit all of us across this field. The future challenges, I think, are not going to get easier at all. In fact, from what I've seen in terms of white papers and government legislation and all the rest that's going on, the work and the in-depth need for that support, for the research, for particular items, for the support for the members of the scrutiny committees, to enable them to make both the challenging situation informative, and for them to be very well informed of the situation. The point has been made by David and Olivia about the issues that come up, and I can only speak, well, I know everybody's is the same, but in terms of the health agenda, with the different protocols outside in the West Yorkshire health agenda, it is difficult when new members come on. It can take 6 to 9 months of the first year just to get around all the names of the different organisations and put in seminars on to enable people to understand, new members in particular, what the function is and processes, etc. It is very, very difficult. And as Olivia and David have said, and I was going to report on it in the verbal report on CA, the challenges itself from the combined authority is going to be enormous, absolutely enormous. But I think that we do need to take up the challenge, and we need to see how we can address it differently. There's one thing in the report, I'm sure it's been left purposely for a discussion today, is where we have identified with the yellow imprint. I've just looked at a few bits, and it says the committee will meet at least, and there's no numbers mentioned in it. Now, as you know, when we first started, Chair, it was 8 meetings per committee, as you indicated. Then it went down to 6. And I know, particularly in my committee, and I'm sure others, I've had to put in at times an extra meeting to deal with the challenges that have come up. And I'm just wondering, Chair, with that being left blank, what is the purpose in relationship to how many meetings would be expected for each committee? And is that something that's got to be decided yet, or is that for discussion this morning?
Well, I think it's both, Betty. I think each scrutiny's got different pressures, of course. I mean, I know David has to slot things, you know, with the Ofsted business and all this carry on. I know you have to do with the health. But what I'm keen on achieving from this morning's meeting is that, and I appreciate all the comments we've made about the combined authorities and the health scrutinies and everything else. What I want to achieve today, because myself and Mark have to take this to the leader and the corporate director on, I believe it's Wednesday, is it, Mark? Wednesday we have to take it. But what I'm keen to go forward with is that, do we agree with the paper as it stands with the 4 relative committees as it stands, plus the management board? Don't we agree with it? Or to cancel the meeting? Or do we go forward? I think it's imperative that we do go forward. I think the number of meetings that we have, we can discuss. We can discuss at a later date. It's the actual principle of having to move forward. Do we move forward? Do we stay still? Are we happy with what we've got? Because this is what we've got to decide today. David, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think, Graham, I think we do move forward on this, because I think there's a great deal of work has gone into it, a lot of thought. Obviously, Mark has gone through a consultation with ourselves, and I think it's good to be, when sort of reading through the report, how that has been, obviously our views, as well as obviously both yours and Mark's expertise in this area, is clearly reflected in that report. So I think it is a clear reflection of where we think scrutiny needs to go in the near future. So personally speaking, I don't see a problem with it moving forward in this respect, Graham. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Mark, can you come in here and answer Betty regarding the blank?
Yeah, I mean, I'd left it like that, Chair, but yes. Sorry, Chair. Yeah, I'd left it like that just for you as a board to have that discussion. I mean, given the strengthened officer capacity now, there is opportunities to schedule more meetings than the 6 that we currently have at the moment. And I do know that certain committees such as Adults and Health have held additional meetings anyway. So I think there's an opportunity for chairs and the board just to discuss what they think would be the beneficial number of meetings for their particular area.
I don't think what we should be doing today is putting a specific number down. If we put a specific number down, we're basically tied to that. So I'll just put my committee, I'll just put the management committee. I would hate to say, well, right, we're going to have 8, use 8 if you will. We're going to have 8 and then use up valuable officer time by not producing something from that 8 meetings. What I'd sooner say is that David comes up and says, I could do with an extra meeting on there. Well, go ahead and do it. Betty, exactly the same. But I don't really want to put a specific number of. I think what we could possibly do is put a minimum of, Mark. Maybe that might work.
Yeah, that would work, Chair. So meet on a minimum of 6, 7, 8 occasions, and then any additional meeting would fall in on the back.
And then we can take it further from there, because we don't know what the new committee is going to throw up.
And it sort of reflects on Councillor Rowley's comments as well in the number of meetings that she's been able to have with her committee. I think Olivia would welcome more meetings. So.
Well, she might not have to have more if there's some of that's taken out and put into a different one. That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to relieve pressure on everybody, and at the same time cover more area. But as I say, I'd like members' views. I'd like members' views on what myself. Well, I would say this, wouldn't I? But I think it's a very, very good report, and I think it's strengthening scrutiny. Whereas in previous leaderships, can I say that I think it's been weakened, dramatically been weakened, and it's just been seen as a tick in a box. Well, I don't want it to be a tick in a box. I want it to fulfil what its function is, and that's to scrutinise. Any more comments, questions, comments? Oh, sorry, Betty, have I got you down again, love? Sorry.
That's okay, Chair. I just wanted to say that I think we must go forward with the proposals in this paper. And actually, in terms of the way that it's each portfolio has been laid out, not only have we in the past looked at our own portfolios, but there are times when we've had to look corporately as well, because some things fall into another box, but it doesn't mean that you're not involved in it as well. So I think we've got to move forward. There's lots of challenges about things to come, and I think the way the paper's been laid out actually validates our thoughts in that. Continue the same. We can't do that. You can never look back. You can use the past to influence the future, Chair, and I think we've got to do that. I think it's an excellent idea of yours to suggest a minimum, and that gives flexibility then to each of the scrutiny committees to decide on their agenda of priorities and put an extra 1 or 2 in, but not to have to identify it at such a time. And I think we've got to give bedding in time as well for the plan that you've identified here, as well as the new structure. And I'm totally delighted about the new staff to help each other in the scrutiny office. So certainly move forward, Chair, as far as I'm concerned.
Lovely. I think what we've got to try and do as well is mirror the restructure what the corporate directors have come up with. because that's seemed to make a little bit of sense now that they've got Glyn as a corporate director, and he's got specific, a specific area. And I do love my straight lines. I do love. I mean, I've no problems with David's or Betty's. The straight lines are there. It's just it started shooting on, splintering all over the place when it got to rest at council. So I think at least if we've got the corporate directors, we've got the chief exec and everything else, we can take that as the management board, the chief exec, and then the regen side of it, and then the environment side of it. I think we may be on a winning way. Let's hope that. But I want to go full of confidence. I'm not going to be slamming my feet and banging my fist on the table, but I feel I need to go with that confidence that we've got the full support of the management board, that this is the structure we want to see. David.
Yeah, it's just a thought, Graham, as you were talking, in terms of we still don't know what's going to happen with the Mayoral Combined Authority over the next few years or so, and would it be worthwhile putting in at the end of the report, if like a time scale for a further review of these arrangements to both take account of who knows what's going to be happening over the next few years, both within our authority and within the combined authority. And it may well be that that there is a review period identified for this structure, because obviously, as you said in the opening of your report, this was as looked at in 2017. You took the initiative and obviously looking at other things to then move forward with a further one. But in order for consistency now, would it be worthwhile putting in a time limit on this structure before there's a further review? So it's just a thought as you were speaking, Graham. Thanks.
Yeah, I can't say anything wrong with that. In fact, I think it should always be open to review. As other sections of the council open up and review, I think scrutiny needs to do likewise as well. So I can't see any problem with that. I know there from Olivia's comments there that we need to proceed, and if we're all still involved, we may need to comment if additional resources or meetings are needed. Well, hopefully we may have that little bit of flexibility now, Olivia. Now we've got a bit more staff as well. So, but as long as I can go forward on Wednesday and tell them this is not what I've come up with, and not what Mark's come up with, it's what we've come up with as a team, and we've come up together with it, and we're 100% behind it. So there you are, leader. This is what we're recommending. So if I can have that, I think we can move on to the next item on the agenda, if that's okay. Is that okay? Everybody agree? I'm not getting any objections to that, so right then, so we'll agree. Obviously, this is the last meeting, so but hopefully we'll all be in the same positions anyway after the annual meeting. Because we've still got that harassment thing to programming as well, so which Mr. Ahmed put forward, Mr. Nazim, Mr. Ahmed, whatever they call it. Right then, so if we agree with that, can we move on then? Great, thank you. I think we've done this one, haven't we? Agenda item 9 is feedback from the Combined Authority overview and scrutiny. Do you know, I'm hearing, and I don't know how true it is, you're there with the fingers on the pulse now. I'm not there, but I'm hearing it's a right mess so far, is the scrutiny side of it. So I don't know, probably you can explain. Right then, do you want to move in with it, David, Betty, Olivia? Any comments to make on it?
I think we've already covered quite a lot of it in terms of the comments during this, these discussions, and I think it's obviously a proposal was put forward which was felt to be workable, but the leadership decided that they wanted something significantly bigger than what had first been envisaged, and it does worry you in terms of the sheer numbers of people who would have to be involved in the proposal. So I think from that respect, I share concerns about how it will go forward now, because a lot of thought was put into what a structure should be, and the new one I don't think has had as much thought put into it as the one that was obviously done previously. Thanks, Graham.
Sorry, it's a stupid machine. This, it just mutes itself for no reason. It's probably sick of hearing me talking. Could I just ask then, talking about whether they're envisaging the Combined Authority to be a much larger operation than it currently is, does this mean then that they're going to be looking for extra members from each authority to fill the spaces in this enlarged scrutiny? Or have I got that wrong?
No, it certainly does. There's 18 at the moment,
yes.
and they're increasing it to 48.
Okay, so that's a lot then, isn't it?
And so the officers have started, you know, if we're going to have an open meeting where we're going to meet, that's the first issue. And then it's the vastness of it all, of getting so many new members involved, meeting in one place, how one committee will complement another and how it will be divided up. And for example, in my remit of climate change, the West Yorkshire Climate Change report is slightly different from the Wakefield, to try and combine the two and ensure that our aspirations are Wakefield's aspirations.
It's the right problem, isn't it? It looks like I might be making a comeback on Combined Authority, it sounds of it. But at least I'll not be going into it green, will I? Anyway, I suppose that'll be resolved in other places. Yep, Betty, have you anything to say, dear?
Thanks, Chair. I think David and Olivia have pointed out the enormity of the changes. Obviously, the police panel is going to stay as it is, because that is in the remit of the new mayoralty. And the three committees that are proposed to set up, which is going to have 48 members between them, one is corporate, one is transport, and one is for the economy. And they're looking at, obviously, to the future arrangements of how these are going to, the makeup of them. I think the issue came up about, obviously, not only the membership of these committees, but the resources that's needed in terms of scrutiny officers to deal with these three committees themselves. Because, you know, the one officer that we have at the moment, Khaled, is an excellent officer, but the way this is working out is going to need extra resources. And I understand that that was something that was going to be discussed across the leaders themselves. The thought was that they were going to, there's still a lot of work to do, and from June onwards there was going to be a kind of phased approach to plan for the future, and then look to a review in the new year as to how the new system was working, or did it need tweaking or changes. There was also within it the discussion about the three chairs of these three committees that I've mentioned meeting regularly, and obviously ahead of that, of the appointment of these chairs, there would be all the discussions around the terms of reference and standing orders of these committees. There should have been a meeting in July, but that was going to be changed into a training of new members event, etc. And looking at the membership, and as Olivia and David have said, the hope of the present chair that some seasoned members of the Joint Committee for the Combined Authority would be returning to sort of give some guidance to any of the new members that would be coming in. It's a huge agenda, huge agenda. The idea of recruitment was to be carried out, as I recall, as soon as possible for officer support, etc. And then, of course, we moved on to the other discussion that was taking place, and we had it at a previous meeting as well, was that the budget position for the future. First of all, the hope is that they are obviously going to produce a balanced budget for the present year. But then there was also a discussion around the future about not only the change in terms of the new West Yorkshire Mayor and the responsibilities there, but as I recall as well, there was a discussion about any implications in terms of Brexit across the authority. And that was an interesting debate as well. We had as well, in the meantime, we had a seminar about the, I think Olivia referred to last time as well, about the infrastructure and the continuity of change and transport plans across the district. Now, the work programme, I think, is going to have to be looked at in detail, very much detail, through the first review and progression. And I think that they were going to look, obviously there's going to be no meetings now until after the local elections, but it is a mammoth task. And I think that's going to be really part of the change of everybody involved in Wakefield as well, Chair.
It all starts off with those three words. Let's have a mayor. Nobody appreciates all this. David, do you want another comment then?
Yeah, thanks, Graham. It's just a sort of coming back. Obviously, the one problem is that it is too distant, I think, from the, if you like, from members, the present relationship, the relationship. You're also struggling, if you like, to get a relationship with officers in order to have that, two-way discussions, which obviously I value as a scrutiny chair in Wakefield. And I think the whole calling process still needs clarification, because there is every barrier in the book to ensure that nothing ever is called in terms of decisions, because of the fact that it is, you need 5 members to call in a decision. Well, that's basically, it's almost impossible to do that, because we don't have working relationships with the members from other districts. So I think there's some inbuilt issues, and I know, for example, sort of Olivia referred to the, if you like, the lack of consistency between the different environmental agendas between the Combined Authority and Wakefield. And I had a chance meeting last week with somebody who had worked not for the Combined Authority, but with the Combined Authority, a number of sort of employment projects, and just sort of a half-hour conversation with that person opened up a whole new number of issues that really should be being discussed, but because of the way in which the whole process is working, you don't get to know about. So I think there are still too many questions, I think, and we've got to be really clear about what we expect from this, because we could end up sort of struggling a little bit in terms of finding out exactly what is going on. Thanks, Graham.
Yeah, it's a massive problem, is this, isn't it? I mean, we're just talking about the relationship between Wakefield and the Combined Authority. Don't forget there's all the other districts and their relationship, and how does that fit in with Wakefield? Oh dear. It sounds, anyway, I'm sure we've got the 3 best people we possibly could have trying to sort this lot out for us, and the best of luck with it. But I feel it's going to be an ongoing project for many years, is this. Okay, thank you very much. Has everybody finished with this then? Thanks for your reports. Anyway, I always find, having been involved with it at the early stages, I always find it fascinating how things have progressed since I left that. Right then, if that's okay, no more questions, no more comments. Thank you. We'll move seamlessly on to the agenda item 10, which is the financial monitoring report. As you can see, that the provision out for the year is the underspend of 826,000, which is excellent news. Children's Services is the only directorate forecasting an overspend at 252,000, but it's significantly less than the 5.6 million forecast at the beginning of the financial year. I think it's excellent. I think it's excellent. Excellent carry on, and hopefully that will come down even further. Could I invite the chairs of the standing committees to comment in relation to their areas of scrutiny, or have they got any questions or comments on that? One moment. Olivia?
I think I'd just like to comment on page 116 and 4, and I think that just covers everything. It says, since 2010, funding for local government has been transformed, both in terms of severity of the reductions in funding, but also in the way funding has been allocated. And this has led to a financial environment that remains significantly challenging. And it goes on to explain that basically we still don't know how social care is going to be financed in the future, how local government is, whether austerity will continue. I had a man on the phone yesterday saying to me, well, you know, why don't we do this, this and this? And I reminded him yet again that we've had 200 million cut from the budget. And so it's all right, for example, looking at this list of things that we're going to scrutinise. But basically, we're looking at a service that we don't know where the funding is going to come from for the future and how we can grow and develop it in line with public expectation. I mean, it's just really quite depressing that we have no plan, no 3-year plan, not even a plan for next year in terms of how we're going to be funded.
Yeah, exactly right, Olivia. Exactly right. And hasn't this been the case for a number of years now? I don't know. It's what they used to say, juggling with soot. But anyway, David?
Yeah, thanks, Graham. I think from the conversations, I have regular conversations with the corporate director for obviously on finance, and I know obviously Margaret has the same sort of conversations as cabinet member. And I think if certain things hadn't occurred, and it's always easy to say this in the year, and it comes back to what Olivia said with regards to having a very clear financial plan, that because it is so tight, it only takes 1 or 2 issues to arise, then it throws out all the budget planning. And no matter how detailed you are with your budget planning, if something happens, and in this case, you know, from Children's Services, it still is the fostering side, the children in care side, which is still the very difficult one that you have to try and estimate in terms of what a budget's going to be about. So from the broader picture of the budget, then I think there has been significant amount of work done to ensure that it does come in and it is on budget, but it is just some certain factors, and it's a bit like adults as well. There are certain things that you cannot estimate for in terms of your budget. So I think looking at it overall, I think some very good work has been done by the directorate in order to control the budget, and that is at a time when significantly important initiatives are being carried out to ensure that the directorate continues to improve. There's a lot of really good practice coming into place now. Some really outstanding ideas are being developed. And I think, having said all that, the budget is as good as it can be. So I think some good work has been done there. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, David. Yeah, I totally agree. But the pressure that we're under all the time in all departments, but especially adults and children, it's enormous. Has anybody any other questions or comments they'd like to make on this agenda item? I'll take the silence as no then, and we'll drift into agenda item 11, which is the executive leader's forward plan of key decisions. And you'll find them on agenda pages 141 to 143. And if you go down There was one approved, as I'm quickly reading through it. There's one approved last week at Cabinet, was Technology Modern Workforce Project. The remaining key decisions still to be taken within hours are reorganisation of the Coroner's Service, transfer of police staff to the Council under a legal agreement, Wakefield and Castleford Towns fund submission, Castleford Civic Centre, and Operation Real Estate Optimisation. Has any members? Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, Lynn. I'm being shouted at by Lynn, saying I've missed out the. I've thrown it on the floor as well. I've missed out agenda item 8, the annual report. Well, members will have seen it and approved theirs. We've got two yet to come. One to the residents and one for the annual council, which we've now completed that now, so I'll forward that out to members if members agree with that. Sorry about that. So basically I'm back to agenda item 11 with the 4 that I've just mentioned. Has anybody got any comments or questions they'd like to add about the forward plan? Yes, no, maybe. I'll take no as an agreement. And it just remains me to say, agenda item 12, the date of the next meeting, which obviously we can't give, but that'll be determined at the annual council in May. So with that, I'll thank everyone for their attendance and ask for the cameras to be turned off and just say goodbye, everybody. Bye.